The road stretched endlessly before me, a dark ribbon glistening under the low glow of a full moon. I could feel my heart racing as the sound of my tires crunching over gravel echoed in the silence. The signs had promised I was only a few miles from the next town, but as I glanced at my phone, the signal vanished, leaving me alone in the vast nothingness. A shiver ran down my spine. Something didn't feel right. Earlier that evening, I had left a friend's small cottage nestled in the woods, the comfort of company still fresh in my mind. It was supposed to be a quick drive home after a weekend of laughter, fireside stories, and way too much s'mores. It was 9 p.m., and the sky was still a vibrant orange, promising a peaceful drive back to the city. But as night fell, the scenery morphed into an eerie landscape of silhouettes and creeping shadows. The first hour was uneventful. I flipped through radio stations, searching for any semblance of music that could break the growing tension in the air. Then I saw the road signs. Next stop Elmwood, 10 miles and gas 8 miles. A sense of relief washed over me. I was heading in the right direction. Or so I thought. As I drove deeper into the night, the headlights illuminated a dilapidated farmhouse standing in the distance, its windows cracked and dark, like hollow eyes watching my every move. The farmhouse came and went, but a creeping unease settled in my stomach. Minutes later, I noticed something strange, a figure standing along the roadside, half hidden by a cluster of trees. I squinted as I slowed down, curiosity battling my instinct to speed away. It was a woman, her dress torn and dirty, hair wild and matted. She raised her hand, waving me to stop. It felt surreal, like something out of a horror movie. Against my better judgment, I rolled down the window just a crack. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice shaky. Her eyes were wide, revealing a desperation I couldn't ignore. "You must help me. They're coming for me," she exclaimed, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. I was taken aback. A deep sense of warning flashed in my mind. What kind of help did she need? Who was coming for her? Before I could respond, the woman leaned closer to the car. I could see the dirt on her face, the trembling of her lips. "Please, just let me in," she begged, glancing nervously over her shoulder. As I opened my mouth to decline, something in the distance caught my eye. A pair of headlights, bright and moving fast down the road. My heart raced again. Who were they? Was she in danger? I was torn, but the rising adrenaline pushed me to make a choice. I hit the lock button. "Get in, quickly," I shouted as I threw the door wide open. She practically lunged inside, slamming the door shut behind her. Just as the headlights swerved towards us, I could hear the engine roar, almost like a lion prowling its territory. My instincts screamed at me to drive away, but I hesitated, feeling a mix of anger and sympathy towards this woman who seemed genuinely terrified. Once she was inside, I pressed the gas pedal, the tires screaming against the gravel as I sped away from the scene. The woman was breathing heavily, her eyes darting around, scanning for any sign of pursuit. "They're following us," she gasped, and my pulse quickened again. Out of the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of the oncoming car's headlights gaining speed behind us. It was too close for comfort. A surge of determination flooded me. "Hold on," I shouted as I veered off the main road, taking a sharp turn onto a narrow, overgrown path that barely resembled a road. Branches scratched against the sides of my car, but I didn't slow down. My mind raced with questions. Who was after her? Why did she end up out here? And how did she find me? I felt as though I'd stumbled into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The sounds behind us grew fainter, but an overpowering silence settled in, thick as fog. I glanced at the woman. Her face was ghostly pale, and her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and panic. "You have to turn around," she whispered, her voice quivering. "It's not safe here." My heart sank as the adrenaline-fueled drive began to wear off. What had I gotten myself into? We had been driving for what felt like an eternity, but it was the tension coiling between us that made time feel static. Suddenly, something in the woods flickered in and out of sight. Was it just my imagination? I squinted, desperate to see, but the shadows clung tightly to the trees, obscuring anything that might have been there. The woman's breath quickened again. "Did you see that?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Before I could answer, the headlights of the pursuing car reappeared, cutting through the darkness like knives. I felt my heart drop. They had found us. I whipped the wheel, trying to navigate the crumbling path, but it was a losing battle. The trees loomed closer and the road narrowed into oblivion. The headlights behind me inched forward, relentless. The woman screamed, and I could barely hear her over the roar of my own panic. Suddenly, I lost control as we hit a large bump, sending us skidding across the ground. I barely regained my footing before the tires caught again, but the movement was erratic. I scanned the rearview mirror, and there they were, a truck, big and menacing, closing in on us. I could make out shadowy figures inside. They were laughing. Their eyes glinted with malice. The panic surged through my veins, and desperation clawed at my throat. "We need to get out of here," I shouted, but the woman curled into her seat, face pale. "No, don't stop. Just drive." Her panic fueled mine as I pressed the pedal to the metal, praying for an escape route. but the path only grew darker, and the trees began to close in on either side. I felt like we were being swallowed by the darkness. Then, out of nowhere, I spotted a faint light ahead, an old cabin illuminated from within. My only chance. I swerved, tires spinning as I veered towards it, praying we weren't too late. The light flickered like a beacon, and as we approached I could see the door ajar. With a jolt of hope, I screamed, "Get out! Get out now!" We lunged from the car, urgency propelling us forward, and fled to the cabin, the door swinging shut behind us. Inside, the air was stale and suffocating. I glanced back at the door, listening as the sounds of the truck came to a halt outside. The laughter faded into silence. Heart pounding, I turned to the woman. "What is going on? Who were those people?" I demanded, trying to catch my breath. Her expression shifted from panic to despair, and she finally spoke. "They're not just looking for me. They want you too," she said, her voice trembling. I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean? Why me?" I realized I was now entangled in something much darker than I could have imagined. Frantically, I glanced around the room, searching for something, anything that could protect us. The windows were barred, and the only exit was the door behind us. I could hear footsteps approaching, the ominous sound echoing in my ears. "We have to hide," I whispered urgently, pulling her toward a small closet in the corner. We squeezed inside, and my heart pounded in my chest, each thump a countdown to whatever was about to happen. We held our breath, waiting. The door creaked open slowly, and I could see shadows cast against the dim light. The figure standing just outside discussing something in low, conspiratorial voices. Time slithered by as we waited, the tension thick enough to choke on. I couldn't make out the words, but every now and then, I caught snippets. Something about a sacrifice, and the last one. I shivered, pressing my ear closer to the door. My mind raced with questions. Sacrifice? Last one? Did they mean us? Just then the door swung wide open, and a tall figure stepped inside. I gasped silently, urging the woman to stay still. The figure stood there for a moment, scanning the room, before turning back towards the rest outside. As they muttered something that sounded like orders, I felt panic rise within me. The woman shook beside me, and I clutched her arm, not knowing what to do. They were closing in on us, and time was running out. I knew we had to make a move. As quietly as possible, I reached for the door latch, praying it wouldn't creak. I caught the woman's eye, and with a silent nod, we both prepared ourselves. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open just enough to peek outside. The coast seemed clear. The voices had shifted further away, and I could hardly believe our luck. "Now go," I whispered, and we slipped out into the dim hallway. A soft glow from the other side beckoned, casting shadows that danced in the flickering light. We followed it, moving swiftly but cautiously, the fear of being caught urging us on. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a thunderclap in my ears, and I could almost feel their eyes searching for us. But just as we were about to step outside, the cabin door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls, and the shadows flooded in behind us. It was a trap. The figures emerged from the dark, their faces twisted into manic grins. "You thought you could escape?" One of them laughed, the sound echoing in the confines of the cabin. My heart sank, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. We were not only running from something monstrous, we had walked straight into its lair. We stood frozen, fear paralyzing our limbs as they slowly approached us, the cabin filling with their menacing presence. "We've been waiting for you," one of them hissed, and dread enveloped us. Just when I thought we were done for, a loud crash erupted from outside. Attention shifted momentarily to the door, and in that instant, I seized my chance. "Run!" I shouted, and we bolted towards the only open window in the back of the cabin. The figures yelled behind us, rage filling their shouts as we scrambled. We dove through the narrow opening, landing clumsily on the ground outside, breathless and wild-eyed. Without looking back, we sprinted into the woods, the darkness swallowing us again. I had no idea where we were going, but anywhere was better than there. The adrenaline surged as branches tore at our clothes and twigs snapped underfoot. We ran with no destination, spiraling deeper into the wilderness. After what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon a small road. I could barely feel my legs, but we had to keep moving. Only then did I hear the sound of engines in the distance. They were searching for us. As we hid among the trees, the glow of headlights broke through the darkness behind us, illuminating the night like a spotlight. The figures were close. I could hear them barking orders at each other, and I knew we couldn't stay hidden for long. The woman beside me looked terrified, and I knew I had to be strong for both of us. But what chance did we stand? Then, as if fate intervened, a car came barreling down the road. I could see a family inside, their faces illuminated with shock as they spotted us standing there. I waved my arms frantically, screaming for help, but my voice barely pierced the tension. They slowed, but didn't stop. Confusion etched on their faces as they pulled away. I felt despair wash over me as it hit me. We were all alone in this nightmare. Then I heard it, a rustling in the bushes directly behind us. I turned just in time to see the figures emerging from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with hunger. I pulled the woman closer to me, praying for a miracle. "We can't go back there," but that was all I managed to say before the sound of tires screeching filled the air. My heart skipped a beat as I turned back, hope igniting again. A police car. It screeched to a halt, and 2 officers jumped out, guns drawn. "Hey, you two! Over here!" One of them shouted. Relief flooded through me as we sprinted towards them. But I could hear the other figures closing in, their angry shouts echoing through the trees. We pressed ourselves against the police car, the officers shouting orders, trying to assess the situation. But the fear didn't leave. It hung in the air like a thick fog. But as the officers began to approach the woods, the shadows slipped away just as quickly as they had come. I watched in horror as the ominous figures melted into the darkness, disappearing like phantoms. My breath was ragged and raw, and I could feel the woman beside me trembling. We were safe, but what had just happened? Who were those people? What had they wanted? The police took us back to the station where we told our story, but something felt off. They brushed it off as mere hysteria, attributing it to the isolation of our surroundings. I left that place with a knot in my stomach, knowing our nightmares weren't over.